Welcome to our show, Briggs on Books. We're here every day at 11 o'clock. I know what you're thinking. Well, it used to be called Artists and Authors. Well, because of COVID and because of us discovering a new technology called Zoom, we've been interviewing authors from all over the world, and we decided not to be a regional California show any longer, but we're going to be a international show. Last week we had a guest from France, we had a guest from London, and we're talking to people all over the world. Anyway, our next guest is Nicolesallakanderson, who's actually in California. So welcome, Nicole.
Hi, nice to be here.
Now tell us the name of your book. Go ahead and put the cover up for a second there.
You guys are going to put the cover up? I also have a copy.
It's on the screen, so
there we go.
Hold it. That's
great.
Wildfire, losing everything, gaining the world. Is this a true story?
Yes, it is. In 2020, when the lightning strikes hit all over California, we lost our house in one of the many. It was called the CZU fire complex up in Santa Cruz,
California, yeah. Now, not that you're an expert on this, but why did we have so many fires that year?
Well, in that case, that particular incident was an unprecedented lightning storm that struck all of California. And I don't know the exact number. It might have been over 4,000 lightning strikes. And so that was on August 16th. And there were 2 fires started here in the Santa Cruz Mountains by lightning. And by August 19th, my house had burned down.
Burnt down. And by the way, just I'm trying to set a perspective for our viewers, our international viewers. Our sky here in the Central Valley is so smoke-filled. Our cars are covered with ash and stuff, and we were a long way from the fire. So you were there at home, I would imagine. The fire starts. How long before you knew that you were in peril?
So it was early in the morning, I think about August 17th, and when we woke up, there was smoke in the mountains, absolutely. But that's a California thing. It happens a lot. We've been evacuated twice before, so I wasn't really nervous. But I was supposed to leave and go out of town that weekend with my husband to take our eldest son to college and leave the younger one behind with all of the animals. And I had a feeling that I shouldn't go with and stayed. That's Sunday. On Monday, I was going to bed and I woke up in the middle of the night and just felt like I needed to check my messages, and we'd had an evacuation warning. And by that next afternoon, my entire neighborhood was gone. So I think we probably got out about 5 to 10 hours. Everyone is a little different. They evacuated us well. Only one person actually died. But most of us, we lost 900 homes in our town alone.
Goodness. Now, did you get all your stuff out, some of your stuff, photo albums? What do you take?
I really, because this is my 3rd evacuation since moving here in 2007, and I really thought I'd be coming back. Unfortunately, my husband took the bigger car with the hitch. And so I had to put a son, all of his things, and 2 dogs in a Volkswagen convertible bug. And so it meant that the worst part, I only had one suitcase. He managed to get all of his computer stuff out. That was his priority. Mine was a suitcase of some clothing, my office, my computer. But unfortunately, we had to leave 2 goats and a cat behind. The cat wouldn't get in the car with the dogs, and it was a tight fit, and there was no way to haul the goats off. I called equine rescue that morning, like 2 a.m., and they were already booked. And by 8 a.m., they weren't allowed up the mountain because it was completely on fire.
Now, you probably thought when you were driving away in your Volkswagen convertible, were you thinking, "Oh, we'll be back tomorrow or the next day"?
3 days is that's the longest they've ever kept us off, But it was different this time, and I probably should have known better because the leaves falling from the sky actually looked like cigarette butts. They were singed. And in the past, when I've been evacuated, it's just smoky. So the fire was incredibly close, but I still, my brain was like, no, I'll be back in 3 days. So I didn't save photo albums. However, because of COVID, because that had just happened, the lockdowns, I got the urge out of the blue to get all of my photos online.
You started scanning
and
them
so it turns
things
out,
like that?
the guy Yeah, I had them all on Google Drive.
Wow.
Just something to do because we
Yeah.
were all together during those early lockdown days. And so I got to save these things, even if physically they burned. Everything was already on the hard drive. So
Sorry, I have so many questions. Usually I have the author on and say, I don't know
good.
what to ask. I say, tell me about your book, but I have a million questions for you. By the way, congratulations on the book. I mean, I always say anybody could write a book. Few people can finish writing a book and then get it published. That's amazing. Well,
Right. Well, I'm a writer. I've got four other novels that were published and of writing, and I've had a blog since
okay.
2013. So writing is something that I just do. And in this case, I did it to document what was happening. So I naturally started writing essays about what was going on in our lives as we rebuilt, as we faced everything. So it's written in real time. And I just did it from the first day that I evacuated until a year after the fire. So it's just essays from that first year collected. And then, because I'm already published, I was able to work out a publishing, deal differently than if I was starting
Yeah.
from scratch. It happened much faster.
Now, go ahead and tell me about the book. Uh,
Yeah, so it's a collection of essays, and it's been the publisher has classified it as nature essays or nature writing. It's definitely more of a reflective theme, but it is also chronological, starting with the day I found out my house was burnt, but then also going back into time, like why did I get this house? Why did I even come to California? The whole aspect of living in the mountains of California and what that means. And it's a wild place. And then getting to the point where we found out we couldn't afford to rebuilding in California and the codes and the process, dealing with insurance. So there's a practical side to it. Your loss of land rights as a landowner in an emergency. No one ever thinks about how you actually doesn't matter that you own that land. The state and the PG&E and everyone else can do what they want for a long time. So it documents all of that, all the way up to a year later, and where we were at and why we chose our format that we did to return to the
uh,
land.
Now, you owned the house?
We owned the house and the land that burnt down. And we ended up putting tiny homes with wheels on the land instead
So
of
you're back on the
rebuilding.
same
We were
land then?
about, but we're on the same land, and we got back within a year of losing our house because we went this way rather than rebuild. People who have been doing the foundation homes, I'm just looking at my neighbor over there, they're still not
They're still
home.
not home. Wow. Now, you had said,
No, some of them just have
before we went on the
foundations.
air, you had said that you had just paid off the house.
We did. We paid off the house the month before it burned.
Um, Now,
Yeah.
tiny homes, we have a show we do here called the Real Estate Show, and I've been interviewing people on tiny homes. That in itself is fascinating, and you cover it's different rules, right, for a home with wheels.
Yes, there are, and every California is in a weird place um, because the state is trying to encourage tiny homes on wheels as a response to the housing crisis that everyone knows we have. I mean, it's obviously a housing crisis if it costs, we couldn't get a bid for less than $1.4 million to build a 2,000
Wow.
square foot home.
Now, is your
And we owned the land.
yeah? Tell me
So
about
this,
your lot. Is it
oh, go ahead.
a city-sized lot, or is it a couple of acres?
It's it's 3 acres in the woods, about 20 minutes north up of the mountain from downtown Santa Cruz, and only about 15 minutes from the ocean if you're going to the Pacific side of things. So it's pretty close in that realm. But this is just what it costs to build. And so the state, going back to the tiny homes, wants us to do that. But every county is doing their
Yeah.
own thing. And Santa Cruz County is not known for development. It's not very pro build. So it's been a struggle, but they just passed an ordinance allowing us to live in tiny homes on wheels on our
Wow.
land, and we're in the process of getting
I
that
had never
permit.
thought of this, but when you build a home, you have to get permits. You have to run lines. Maybe all the power lines had come down from the fire. Who knows?
They've all burned.
And then you need water, a well, all these things you have to do that the government kind of can inhibit your rebuilding of the house. And they did, I guess. You gave up on rebuilding and you got a tiny
We
home.
did. Yeah, because it was cost prohibitive to do it. There was about 300 to $400,000 of work before you even broke ground.
Wow, that's incredible. Um, so the
Yeah.
book takes you. You actually have flashbacks to how and when you acquired the house, why you moved there, through the fire, and then does the book take us through the present?
Yes, all the way up to the present and working through a lot of the grief of losing my house, the grief of losing my pets. That still weighs very, very heavily on me. The loss of a lifestyle, we had chickens
Yeah,
and goats and, it was, and we had a
yeah.
woods. We lived in a forest. Now we live because so many trees were burnt and also cut down by PG&E after the fire without our
Wow.
permission. They pulled an emergency measure and clear cut an acre of our
Huh.
land to make putting up the wires easier for
Reinstalling the
them after
wires.
everything
That's
burnt.
crazy.
Even they took trees that weren't
Yeah.
dead and places that weren't burnt. It was really traumatic, and there's an essay about that in the book as well. But now we live in the full sun, so it's like we live in a desert. It's a very different place, and so mourning that and getting used to that, but also finding beauty in it because there is beauty in the plants that
Yeah.
follow fires and the way trees
Whole
recover.
new
Um,
birth.
n- Nature knows
Yeah.
what to do.
Well, what a story. I'm going to read this book. I, I generally
Great,
only read nonfiction anyway, but this is just, it's
good.
intriguing. Like I could go on for an hour asking you questions. They only give us 10 or 12 minutes. I've been getting the cutoff sign for about 5 minutes, but you're, you're a
Okay.
fascinating person and the whole book is fascinating. Anything else you want us to know about you or the book?
No, I think the part of that gaining the world, and I'd mentioned this before to you, but losing everything was very hard, but having nothing is actually quite freeing. And that is something that we talked about it being called radical
Yeah.
declutterization. I'm not wishing it on anyone, and yet it's been amazing and a benefit that I would not have ever expected.
Our guest is Nicole Anderson. And by the way, what would people find if they go to your website?
On my website, I have a link for the books. You can order autographed
Uh-huh.
copies. It also has all the Amazon links. And then there are links to all my other novels as well. I have novels on Amazon and on Audible, historical fiction and contemporary romance. And I have a sci-fi trilogy coming out soon, as well as a blog,
Now,
all in
is
one
this
spot.
book yet on Audible?
Not yet. I'm debating there's a desire for me to be the narrator because often memoirists narrate their own thing, whereas we've had other narrators do my other stuff, and I'm being hesitant.
I
That's
think
all.
your voice would go
So,
good. I listen to a lot of Audible books. I think you'd be the perfect
okay.
reader of the book. So,
All right. Well, maybe I will do it then. I need
all
that
right. For
confidence.
our guests, for our viewers, go to Nicolesallakanderson.com and find out about Nicole and order this book. Just go to, actually, I went to Amazon. I started typing your name and the book popped up. It was pretty easy. So,
Yes.
thank
Yeah.
you so much for.
I'm the only Nicole Sallak Anderson in Amazon. Got to have the Sallak though.
Thank you. I want to talk to you again in a month or so if you have time to come back on, or maybe I'll get the book and read it, then we'll invite you back and I can ask you a million more questions.
That would be wonderful.
All
I'd
right,
love it.
Nicole. Thank you so much. We'll be back with another author right after this. Don't go anywhere. Don't touch that mouse.
Thank you.